The ANC's NEC maintains that former President Jacob Zuma was given the opportunity to make representations before the party's National Disciplinary Committee. The party announced Zuma's expulsion following internal disciplinary proceedings. ANC NEC member Zuko Godlimpi says Zuma was warned.
Secretary General warns members of the ANC, as he should, when they act in a manner that portends towards a violation of the Constitution. But a person saying, I am not going to vote for the ANC, I'm going to vote for another political party. A person going to the court of law insisting that they're a leader of a political party. A person going to a court of law saying they want to be on the parliamentary list of another political party and that there must be a legal ruling on the matter. And a person openly campaigning against the ANC on behalf of another political party is a different matter altogether. And that is why the consequence of it was the decision to charge the member.
Godlimpi says Zuma's actions cost the ANC dearly during the recent elections.
The damage that he could have done, he's already done it. The ANC has to contend now with how it reconstructs its presence on the ground in the areas where it experienced the greatest bloodbath on account of his actions.
Well, let's talk now to former ANC NEC member Tony Yengeni, who represented the former President Jacob Zuma at his disciplinary hearing last week. Good morning to you and welcome to the program. There's so much to get through and I really want to hear from your perspective what your reaction is to certain things. So let's start. The decision was made. The ANC announced yesterday the findings that the former president contravened Rule 25-17-17-4 of the Constitution. I just want to read that section for our viewers. Acting on behalf of or in collaboration with the political organization or party, other than an organization or party in alliance with the ANC, in a manner contrary to the aims, policies and objectives of the ANC. Mr. Yengeni, were you watching that briefing yesterday and how did you feel about it?
Which briefing?
Well, with the ANC's announcement that giving the details on the expulsion.
No, I was not watching it.
What is your reaction in the aftermath now that the decision is out?
We have had the announcement yesterday, and I'd had a consultation with the former president on Sunday at his house here in Forest Town around about midday, and I reported to him about the DC process and the possible outcomes. So we had a discussion and then we left agreeing that we were going to wait for the announcement. Lo and behold, there was a leak late in the afternoon and the whole thing was out in the public domain, which we had we were shocked when we saw that. Was would have expected that the DC would communicate with us instead of reading about its conclusions in the media. And so I've not spoken to Comrade Zuma since the leak, and yesterday they sent me the official document. So I will need to talk to him and consult about his response to this matter. It's not my matter.
Yeah.
It's his matter. I'm simply representing him.
How would you describe him for us, Mr. Yengeni, the weekend conversation that you had? We'll talk a little bit more about what happened in the DC itself when you left, and there were some issues relating to some of the technical things, and I want to get into what you would have said had you stayed as an emissary of Mr. Zuma. But what was his demeanor like after you related to him? You know, how things went in the DC to the point where you left. What was his reaction? What was his state of mind?
Well, you'll be surprised. His demeanor was that of a person who was very relaxed. Actually, we were laughing throughout the conversation when I was telling him the story of what transpired. But on a serious note, Msholozi is unmoved. He believes that the platform used to take him to a DC is not the right one. He doesn't understand why his own organization, his own movement that is set for so long, wants to take him to a DC through a computer and not person to person, so that the serious issues that are confronting him are discussed between comrades, face to face. not through a phone, not through a computer. So he is not moved when it comes to that platform. He thinks that there should be a person-to-person interaction. He was the deputy president at some point, was the president at some point. He should be treated with respect.
This was an act of disrespect, you would say?
That's how he feels, that they needed to, acknowledge his contribution to the struggle for liberation and to the ANC, and deal with him in a proper family way, a family manner, than to treat him like a Malala pipe of some sort.
Do you think the outcome, Mr. Yengeni, might have been different had you stayed for the hearing, and you've said, I'm not putting up with this, and left when the virtual hearing got underway and then started to experience some technical difficulties?
No, I don't think so. I think when I listened and in these deliberations with the DC of the ANC, the sense that I got was these people have already decided the direction they're going to take, and nothing is going to stop them. Even when I persuaded them to allow me to have a pre-hearing so that we can take care of the logistical and operational issues before us. And I was trying to convince them that I'm new in the process. I need time to familiarize myself with the detail. That was the first time that I appeared in the DC. And I indicated to the chair of the DC that would want to have a conversation with his presenters so that we can agree on date and time. That very night when I got home, I got a letter from them to say the following day, we are expected to appear before the pre-hearing at 12 o'clock. I was like, what is this now? They gave me the assurance that they'd consult me about the time, venue, date of the meeting, even the platform for that matter. But the letter simply instructed me to appear at 12 o'clock the following day. So I called Comrade Uriel, who's the chief presenter of the ANCDC, to say, but what is this? Do you guys think that I'm sitting there at home folding my arms waiting for you to summon me to a meeting? Don't you think that it is correct for you to consult me and say, Comrade Tony, are you available at 12, or is it at 1, or at 3? Why do you think that you can just arrogate yourselves the right to summon me? I'm not the church member, yeah?
What do you think is really at play here, Mr. Yengeni, given the sequence of events? And as you say, the lack of consideration, the lack of respect, not treating Mr. Zuma like a family member?
Well, I think that to complete your answer to your last question, I think that I've had spokespersons of the ANC yesterday talking about all sorts of things, including that there was a pre-hearing. That's a lie. There was no such. There was not a pre-hearing. They denied me a pre-hearing. So, and they denied Comrade Zuma's request for a physical meeting. So there was no way that I was going to change anything when they rejected everything that I put on the table, and they said we're proceeding with or without him, with or without a pre-hearing, and take it or leave it.
As you say, it was a foregone conclusion. So I'm gauging then you don't believe there's anything that you could have said to change their minds. Do you think you could have mounted, or would you have mounted? What would have been the substance of your defense, I want to say, or your submission to that hearing?
Well, to us, it was clear that they are using, the main charge is to vote for another party, or to be in alliance with other party, as the code of conduct of the ANC maintains. And I was asked this question last week by a journalist. And my answer was a simple answer. When I was in the NEC of the ANC, there was talk about the ANC voting with and for the DA. I vehemently opposed that. Then, I still do. Now, if you vote for the DA, DA is not in alliance with the ANC. The DA is an opposition to the ANC.
Yeah.
The DA opposes everything the ANC stands for. Yeah. Now, how do you deal with Zuma differently if leaders of the ANC are imploring or calling upon members of the ANC to vote for the DA?
Do you make I was listening to that interview, it's with a colleague of mine. Do you make the distinction, Mr. Yengeni, between the ANC voting expeditiously or expediently in Parliament along certain issues with opposition parties? Of course, they're in a GNU now, so they're going to have to find each other, even inside that government formation. The difference between that and actual party leaders internally saying, I'm going to go out, form a different party, and vote for that particular party while remaining a member. Is there a distinction in your mind, or are both those things the same thing?
I think they may be different, but almost the same thing, because there are many, many instances before in our history, during these 30 years, where members of the ANC, either in local councils or provincial legislatures or wherever, who voted with the opposition, and the DA in particular. And those comrades were expelled by the ANC.
Which examples are you thinking of when you say
I don't have immediate examples now, but if you want them, I'm sure you can find them. There are many, many examples of ANC members who voted for the DA who were expelled, particularly or especially at local level. So I'm saying that the distinctions between what you are saying and what I'm saying is really not something substantial as far as I'm concerned. I think the principle is that if you vote for another party while you're a member of the ANC, in terms of the ANC code, black and white, states that you shall not do that. But today, ANC leaders are doing that without caring what the code is saying.
Mr. Yengeni, is Mr. Zuma going to appeal? As you say, you've just shared that detail with him. You haven't had a conversation after this was all confirmed. But do you have an inkling as to whether he will appeal? How's he going to play this now? What have you advised him even?
Well, I think we've got 21 days, is it 20 days today, for him to mull over this and to take a decision. And when it does so, he will instruct me accordingly, and I will take that matter up with the ANC. But for now, I think he's still consulting his lawyers, he's thinking over it, and I'm certain that in due course he will come back and say this is the next line of march.
Joining me in studio is former ANC NEC member and ANC veteran Tony Yengeni, who represented former President Jacob Zuma at his disciplinary hearing last week. And we're talking about the reaction from the former president and where to next. I want to go to this one, if I can, Mr. Yengeni, is, in a sense, as outsiders, as people who are observing all of these things going on, there's deep pain inside, of course, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the interview. But it seems as if this is a massive moment for the ANC, and I'm wondering, given the aftermath of this, as you say, you're not sure how Mr. Zuma is going to react, whether he will appeal, what the nature of that appeal would be once he does mount it, if he in fact does. But is this a big mistake, in your view, that in hindsight the ANC will look back on as a missed opportunity? I
think so. I think it's a very big political blunder on the part of the ANC. Forget about the verdict. Just the way you conduct a DC process against a person like a former president. there are so many mishaps, there are so many undercurrents and interference. So myself, I was looking forward to this process, but after my experiences, I'm very disappointed, and I think the ANC, because you can't use the disciplinary code to deal with political issues. The disciplinary code is there to pursue rogues, people who are, involved in very wrong things. And I think in this instance, it's a matter that could be dealt with internally, amicably, politically. But Comrade Zuma says in public that he had to take the step he took because he tried everything in the book to raise his issues. But those issues were just ignored and he was rebuffed.
Is he a sacrificial lamb, a scapegoat?
Well, I hesitate to go into those issues now. I think that I would prefer to limit myself to the process, the TC process. Because because if I go into ANC politics, it's going to muddy the waters.
Let's go back into the DC then. It's a serious finding, the NDC finding that Jacob Zuma acted in a clandestine way without the knowledge of the organization. And it's quite chilling when it says with the objective of undermining the ANC and working contrary to and preventing the ANC from achieving its aims and objectives. Effectively, they're saying, he was being sneaky and underhanded and they're not going to be taking things lying down. How do you respond to that?
I don't think so. I think that Msholozi, December 16, stood out in public and was very bold. Not was sneaky, he was bold to say, I'm ANC, I will die ANC. And I'm doing what I'm doing to save the ANC. And I know that many people, they just laugh at it, ha, ha, ha. He's deadly serious about that. Because he spent a lot of time in prison, in exile, and elsewhere, fighting for this organization. And so I think that we may well, because he believes that the ANC of old must come back, must be brought back, because the ANC of today is doing things that are not in line with the history and the strategy and tactics of the ANC.
And we've heard him say, we've heard him say that, we heard him, as late as the 16th of December, express similar sentiments. What would it take to, and I think even for yourself, you've said, again, when somebody asked you, would you leave the ANC? Heart and soul, it seems as if, and statedly so, you and Mr. Zuma are ANC for life. It's in your blood, it's in every fibre of your being. Mr. Zuma has been an ANC member for over 60 years. You've been a comrade of his inside of exile and post-liberation in South Africa. What would it take for Jacob Zuma, and you would have had these conversations with him, to come back to the ANC and bring everyone in MK with him?
Well, no, we've not discussed that, but I think that I'm sure if the things in the ANC change for the better, the ANC operates in a manner that is consistent with its own constitution and code of conduct and remains true to the National Democratic Revolution, remains true to the cry and demand of our people for the expropriation of land without compensation, radical economic transformation. If the ANC remains true to those ideals, I'm sure Comrade Zuma will rethink his ways.
What does it actually look like? Let's take it away from the platitudinous and the philosophical to the real and practical.
Yeah, look, you keep on bringing me back to the issue of the political situation, which I'm trying as best as possible to avoid it.
Why though, Mr. Yengeni?
Because I never knew in my life, in my political life, that one day the ANC would go into bed with the DA and exclude its own former members.
This is now predating the GNU, you're saying? Because, you know, these sentiments and the formation of MK was predating the GNU.
Predating and even after. Because now you're asking me the question about today's environment. And I'm saying, I never knew or even dreamt that this would ever happen, but it has happened. And there's been a reaction. And I think it's false to accuse Comrade Zuma to be responsible for the problems of the ANC. The problems of the ANC are self-inflicted as far as I'm concerned. And they are internally based. But also, you know yourself as a person who works here every day that there are protests around the country all the time about the lack of delivery of services to the people.
This is though across administrations, right, Mr. Yengeni?
Yes, but the distinction or the difference now is that the people have spoken in the last election. When Zuma was president, it took us to 62%. Cyril came, took us to 57%, and his second stint takes us to 40%. So there's a vast distinction between then and now. And we must acknowledge that and not play political games. Because those are serious things. Those are now the people speaking, not me. Yes.
What next?
The next step is for me to consult with my big brother, Msholozi, and he must guide me about the next step. But I can assure you, this is not the end of the road. I think we're still going to travel this road for a very long time. Very long time.
Mr. Zuma's got some aces up his sleeve?
I don't think he's going to accept being expelled by the ANC from the ANC. I think he's going to fight this battle, as I say, because he believes that the ANC should go back to its roots. When I listened to spokespersons of the ANC, the other one was here last night, they're gloating about this thing of expelling Zuma. And they are missing the point. And the point is that historically the ANC, 112 years old organization, whenever it has problems, it brings its people together and say, what is the problem and how do we move forward? And I think the ANC needs that today.
So there's been reaction from other party vets like Mavusa Msimang, the ANC Veterans League deputy president, who says he's used the expulsion of former President Jacob Zuma as an opportunity to build the ANC. Can they rebuild without Zuma? Certainly, from what you're saying now, that's an impossible task. And he has said before the ANC is better off without him, Mrs. Msimang.
Look, forget about Zuma for a second and listen to our own people, whether they are SACP or COSATU affiliates, or members of the NEC, or Naledi Pando, or Lindiwe Sisulu. Those voices are being silenced. People are not accepting the reality of the situation today. How are we going to improve ourselves if we don't acknowledge that the people are saying to us, you must change your ways? You know? So I'm saying that you can attack Zuma as much as you like and make him to be a bad man, but deal with the issues that the people are putting in front of you. Please, you know? Why do you ignore the SACP or COSATU affiliates who are talking to you as allies now? You rather listen to the DA and not to the SACP. What is that about?
There's deep hurt. Am I reading that correctly, Mr. Yengeni?
Excuse me?
There's deep hurt, it would seem. Are you hurting?
No, I'm hurting myself because, you know, when I came back from exile, I didn't come to South Africa in 1990 through an aeroplane. I came walking with my AK-47 and my pistol ammunition, my grenades on me, walk through the borders to fight the enemy. So to find yourself being ostracized and rebuffed by newcomers, I mean, it hurts. It does hurt.